So hello and welcome back to this channel, and today's video is going to be around the topic of preparing for an assistant psychology job interview. Hi there, so before we actually get into this video, I would like to remind you that subscription is free, so make sure you like, comment and subscribe, and let's get this conversation going. Hello and welcome back to this channel, and today's video is going to be around the topic of preparing for an assistant psychology job interview. So when it comes to actually getting this job interview, so much can happen. You can think, where do I start? What should I do? But one thing that I had done in the past previously was to think about what are the company or what are the trust values and visions. So I would also like to thank those who have reached out to me, who have asked for advice for assistant psychology job interviews, and also one of you who also asked for me to actually do a video in sharing my advice for assistant psychology job interviews. So this is not going to be a one-off video. I thought it would be very useful to kind of do a series on preparing for an assistant psychology job interview, because I know when I had that job interview, you have so much emotions. You think, well, this interview, if it's successful, it can change my life and so much can happen. So there's also that emotion going in, and then you're also trying to prepare for this job interview. So I'm going to walk you through my experience of actually preparing for these interviews. Also, just to add, if you're new to this channel, so far I had 8 assistant psychology job interviews, and I had one job interview which was also psychology related, and it was a clinical associate psychologist, and that is the role that I'm currently in. So one of my second to last assistant psychology job interviews, I actually got the job afterwards, after I had been rejected. So a new position came up, and I will put the video up there, and then I got the job. But because it was all around the same time period of me actually getting this current job, that is a trainee clinical associate psychologist, I decided to go with that job and not go ahead with the assistant psychology role. So from my experience, it was just like, after all these job applications, all of these interviews, it's just like when that time came, it was like I had two choices to have. And the reason I'm sharing this, because when you get an interview, some people have had the opportunity to get an interview straight away, but it might be like my case where it took me till interview number 9 to actually get a job interview. So also remembering that this may not be an easy process, so make sure you are taking time to take care of yourself, and also remembering that there is power in resilience. You might fall down, but you get up when you're ready to apply again and to put in the work. And maybe as well look outside of assistant psychology interview jobs. But that's a whole another story, because right now I feel like there's something good happening where there are more psychology roles happening. But let's stick to this video in what I want to share with you today, and that is things that I do in preparing for an assistant psychology job interview. As I've mentioned, this is going to be a series, and today's video is us thinking about, you've got this job interview, but what are their values and what are their goals and visions? So we can ask ourselves, why is it important to know the company's or the trust values? And I've wrote some things down. So I would say that it's important because it gives you an understanding of what the type of person the trust or company is looking for. Number 2, it allows you to be in the position to be the best candidate for this assistant psychology role by understanding the trust values or the company's values. Also, I wrote down, it gives you an opportunity to kind of understand the trust that you're working for, because if someone has their values, it's kind of like, I'm saying, I stand by these 5 things, so I'm able to understand the company, the potential company that I'll be working for. And lastly, I wrote, it allows you as well to fit into this company or to this trust. So imagine if a trust has a value about health and well-being, and I think, wow, this is a personal preference of mine, this is a personal passion of mine, I will definitely fit into this company, because not only in my personal life but also in my working environment, health and well-being is one of my passions. So understanding what the values are allows you to actually know how you can also fit in with the company. So what are some action points? So you have this interview, and a tip I'm saying is that you must understand the values and the visions and the goals of the company. So an action point I would suggest is, when you've got this interview, go on the company website or the trust website and see what their values are. What are the values of this trust? What are their aims? And become acquainted with these values and also with these aims. Another action point I would say is, think about, experiences in your personal life and more specifically in your working life, and think to yourself, what are some ways in which, I've actually demonstrated these values in my personal life or also in my working life. So it allows you not to just have I would say an intellectual knowledge of these values, but allows you to see how you as a person fit into these values, and also more practically, because this is a job interview, allowing you to actually see, my relevant experience as a support worker or my relevant experience as a student actually fits in with these values. And you can actually bring in practical examples when you have that job interview. So those are your 2 action points. Go on the website, find out their values, write them down, be acquainted with them. What do these values mean to me? And what do these values mean in general? So that you can think of practical ways that you can actually share in your job interview. So what I want to do now is, I'm going to go on a random trust website, and I'm going to choose Sheffield Teaching Trust, because I've had quite a lot of job interviews here, not in terms of assistant psychology jobs, but while I was studying, I also applied for healthcare assistant roles. And I realized that in these interviews, they always ask a value-based question. And also in my assistant psychology job interviews, they were in different locations. And I think, to my memory, I think 4 out of the 8 interviews I had of assistant psychology job interviews, they asked me a value-based question. So you can probably see now why I'm suggesting that it's quite important to understand, the values of the trust you're going to be working for or the company, because in my experience, 50% did ask me a value-based question. And even if they didn't, I always tend to weave in the values in my interview questions. So I've got here Sheffield Teaching Hospital Trust values, and I'm just going to read them out. And then after I read them out, I'm just going to give you an example of a value-based question, and also some things for you to kind of consider when you're actually preparing for your interview, whether it be in Sheffield, whether it be in London. They all have their own individual values. So before I read that, let me just give you an example. So in the UK, most of the assistant psychology jobs are on the NHS, which is the National Health Service. And even though the National Health Service has its own generic values, and every trust under the NHS has their own individual values. And giving an example, Sheffield Teaching Trust is very different to your teaching trust or just all around the countries, because anytime I've had an interview, I haven't really seen all the values be literally 100% the same. Sometimes there might be an overlap of things, but every trust has things which are unique to them. So it's very important to look at the individual value trust for the company you've applied for. So in Sheffield Teaching Hospital Trust, the values they have is patients first, which basically is ensuring that the people we serve are at the heart of all that we do. Their second value is being respectful, so being kind, respectful, fair, and valuing diversity. Their value number 3 is ownership. So for them, this means celebrating our successes, learn continually, and ensure we improve. Value number 4 is unity, and they have written here, work in partnership with others. And the last final value is deliver. So it says be efficient, effective, and accountable for our actions. So I will just give you like just a random thing, just straight off my head, of a value-based question. So I'm now looking at these values, and let me just go with the first one. So the first one is basically putting patients first. So the question may be, can you give me an example of where you've put a patient first? Let me choose another value. So another value is unity. And I've had a similar question of this where not on unity, but a different one, because well-being. They basically asked me, what do I think well-being is and how would I demonstrate that in a workplace? So let me take the word unity. So a question could be, what does unity mean to you, and how have you demonstrated unity amongst your colleagues? So those are what I would call value-based questions. And I'll honestly say, from my experience, I feel like Yorkshire as a whole, they tend to ask value-based questions. So I've had interviews around the country, but not in London. For some reason, I never got an interview there. In terms of the value-based question, they may ask you, a question on putting patients first. But sometimes what I do is I may also even add the other values in there. So I may say, in this and this situation, this shows I'm able to put patients first because of this. But also this shows I'm respectful because in this situation, I was able to consider my service users' religious beliefs in this way. And this made me a better clinician because I did this. So I'm just giving you an example of how even in a question, even though the question may be just targeted at one value, you can actually even talk about the other values. You can even talk about, in putting a patient first, this meant that I had to contact the OT team to see what other programs were available to allow this patient to be engaged in services. So here you can actually see that even though your question is on one value, you've actually added 2 other things on being respectful and also unity and working with others. So I hope you enjoy this video. This is something worth seeing where we help others help themselves. And if you've made it this far, make sure you like, comment and subscribe. And I'll be so happy to hear from you. If you have any question in terms of interviews or just generally, you can put it in the comments below, or you can message me on LinkedIn, because I'm really excited of, sharing with you this experience, because it's taken me back to memory lane of when I had these assistant psychology job interviews. It was moments of resilience and just, being kind to myself. And I'm now happy to share it back to you in helping you to allow your experience to hopefully be a bit more easier. Hope you have a lovely day and see you in the next one. Bye.